Today on Sekulow, Joe Biden announces a 2024 run to, quote, finish the job, a job he never started. We'll talk about that and more today on Sekulow.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome to Sekulow. We are taking your calls through 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. So we have the official announcement. Joe Biden, Harris, they have announced they are running for office. Did they do a live event? Absolutely not. Did they do a rally? No way. Was it totally pre-taped with a lot of B-roll? Yes. You want to play it for everybody right off the top? Now, if you're listening, there's a lot of quiet moments in this one, so just get through it with us. But you'll be the judge of what they think voters care about and what they totally ignore. See if you pick up on it. I did right away. Take a listen or a watch.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy, dictating what health care decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote.
Okay. What did he not cover there? Well, record inflation. Under Joe Biden, it's at 5%.
Gas is, by the way, almost at $5 a gallon here.
Under President Trump, it's at 1.4% inflation. Biden, 87,000 new IRS agents. Trump, 0 new IRS agents. The Biden tax hikes on 111 Americans. Under Trump, there were $3.2 trillion in tax cuts. He did not talk about the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, the border crisis, no foreign policy, which we're seeing play out in Sudan as we speak, and in the Middle East as we speak, now that Saudi Arabia has aligned itself with Iran. Again, loss of energy independence in the United States and having to rely on bad actors around the world to provide much dirtier energy to our process, surging crime throughout cities and states around the country, horrible drug usage, including the fentanyl scourge on our country, the baby formula shortage, the infrastructure issues, even with the Infrastructure Reduction Act that had nothing to do with infrastructure. But what he's doing that is he is ignoring the world. Well, he's ignoring the reality that we all live in, which is like we're worried day to day about the economy and about there's a foreign war between European countries ongoing right now.
Yeah, what's interesting is this was a strategy that's this is not the first time this strategy's been done. So this idea that you would focus on domestic, that was a George W. Bush strategy, and then, of course, 9/11 hit. The problem you got here is this is his second term. Now, his domestic policy advisor, Susan Rice, announced that she's leaving on May 24th. Now, I suspect that what you heard in his announcement today was crafted by a Susan Rice, who's now his domestic policy advisor, who's probably going to go over to the campaign, is my guess.
That's why I would imagine takes her out of the congressional oversight and just puts her in the political role to do the straight-up politics. Their strategy is obviously we're going to ignore the bad issues happening around the world. We're going to lie about Republicans. We're going to say they want to, again, it's to push grandma off the cliff, even though no Republicans support cutting any of those programs like Medicare and Social Security. In fact, they're trying to figure out how do we keep those programs alive for my generation because there's less of us than there are baby boomers. So that's, again, trying to reform the system, not trying to cut back anybody's that they deserve. Any of those things they've been paying taxes in that they do deserve to get those benefits. But, again, those threats like they want to take it away from the elderly people, which we hear all the time from Democrats. The question is, can you run a campaign from the basement of the White House? Like this time it was last time it was his house.
Yeah.
This time it'd be the basement of the White House. Basically a Rose Garden campaign is what they're calling it.
Well, and it looks like you can well see a rematch of Biden versus Trump. How do you feel about that, folks, by the way? Could be Biden versus Trump again. 1-800-684-3110. We'd love to hear what you have to think about it. 800-684-3110.
President Joe Biden making it official, announcing his 2024 re-election campaign.
Let's finish this job. I know we can, because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
The timing for today is no accident. It marks exactly 4 years since then candidate Joe Biden announced he was entering the race for president.
However, don't expect to see many changes. You won't see any big campaign rallies for many, many months.
Ever.
There will be apparently a donor summit at the White House on Friday, where essentially they say, okay, we're going to run for president. We probably need $2 billion. Right. Who's in?
The RNC is out with a statement as well today, calling Mr. Biden, quote, out of touch and accusing him of creating crisis after crisis.
His approval ratings stay in the low 40s, including record-breaking inflation and also immigration numbers at the U.S.-Mexico border. Also that botched exit from Afghanistan that is still being investigated on Capitol Hill that we have been covering. And also the poll results that we've been sharing and talking about as recently as, Monday, showing that Americans are concerned about his age. The president is 80 years old. He's the oldest ever U.S. president.
Ahead of the re-election announcement, a CBS News poll found Democrats accept Biden's re-election bid, but aren't necessarily excited about it. And still, nearly half of Democrats don't want the 80-year-old to run, and they cite his age as the reason.
It looks as if the campaign manager is going to be Julie Chavez Rodriguez. Principal deputy campaign manager will be Quentin Fulks. And there you see some of the leadership chairs.
I don't see where Joe Biden thinks that he is in any way helping to improve the lives of Americans. Let's go back to the Ronald Reagan question. Are you better now than you were 2 years ago? And the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see this, the 2024 really shape up. And while Ron DeSantis is doing the international trip abroad, which you do if you're preparing a presidential run to show that you've got the kind of knowledge to not only understand domestic issues, but international issues. So he's meeting allies like the Japanese. The problem is he's doing that, and he ripped the head off a reporter, kind of, when he was asked, like, when are you going to announce your campaign? And you kind of got another taste of Ron DeSantis, like he wasn't prepared for that question. Like, hello, they're going to ask you that because what are you doing in Japan?
He was on Hannity last night, and Sean asked him, and he said he was from Japan, and he said he's going to finish the legislative session before he makes any announcements, which is, I think it's the middle of May, maybe.
End of June.
No, end of June, so it's a while yet. We're taking your calls at 800-684-3110, talking about this matchup politically, which could well be Joe Biden and
if you held the Republican primary today, it's 100% it'd be Joe Biden versus
Donald Trump.
I mean, RFK, he's trying to make that kind of move to take a dent into Biden, but that's in the primary, and they're not going to have debates in the Democrat side. So Joe Biden's the nominee unless there's some health issue, and right now Donald Trump would be the nominee, barring some major shift in polling. I mean, most pollsters are looking and saying, when you get to 40%. You're not beatable.
It's the interesting.
That makes it much tougher for DeSantis to say, do I want to put my family through this war?
He's going to run. Ron DeSantis is going to announce, I'm hearing pretty clearly.
He's got a lot of pressure on him from a lot of people who have given him a lot of money.
Yes.
Donated
How
to
big
him.
of a factor does that become?
It's tough to tell those people no after they've,
hundreds of millions
of dollars in checks and tried to make you out to be, the most powerful leader in the world. And they believe in you, and they believe that you could beat the former President Trump. But what President Trump's team has done is really just double and triple down. Also, the indictment really underscoring that, hey, as wild as you thought President Trump and that administration was, he really was under a witch hunt. And
I think the New York indictment clearly bolstered his support because you saw what political nonsense
and what
that
it's like
was.
To live under that, people I think gave a little more pass on the attitude.
Well, look,
because when you're living through that and trying to lead the country,
who would know that better than us?
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
not
that one
easy
was a zero. Then the Fulton County DA announces, by the way, I'm not going to have because everybody expected it in April. I'm not going to have it in April. I'm not going to have it in May. I'm going to probably do whatever I do. I'll announce it in the July term, which in the Superior Courts in Fulton County in Georgia, that goes from about July 11th to I think September 1st. So you get July, August, and when they'll make an announcement in Fulton County, it's going to be something you're not going to understand. That's going to bolster him again. And then I don't know what happens on the federal level. I think we still don't know. That's the great unknown. We are taking your calls at 800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Because it looks like, I mean, if it was today, it would be a matchup. And clearly, if DeSantis does engage and decides to run, you have DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and a couple of others that have declared, a couple of saying no. Pence has said he's going to run. He's polling about 6 or 8%.
Yeah, that's what, and it becomes tougher for Ron to get that number because there's enough of those people still running, the Tim Scotts and Nikki Haley's and Mike Pence's, who are getting 4 to 5, 6% right off the bat.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump doesn't need their numbers. Ron DeSantis does.
Yeah.
So again, we'll take your calls 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. But I think it's interesting that Joe Biden decided to do it again in a way where, again, not a live event, not a rally, not something, just video.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me
but it was
that
abortion.
There was all this talk. Yeah, it was abortion, which is going to be very big for them. And then
January 6th and chaos.
Yeah, and chaos. Which will be the theme that they run with. I don't think there's any doubt on that.
Yeah, MAGA extremists.
Yeah, it can be the MAGA. He said MAGA extremists is the exact phrase he used. What's interesting to me is, as this matures now into a real political season, there was all this talk that others were going to be vying for the Democratic, slot, and that included Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has announced, but others that we're saying Gavin Newsom went on his red state tour. Remember that? There was talk about Michelle Obama. The fact is that you had a situation where it looks like, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is in there, but I don't know if that's going to be a significant factor.
Yeah, let's go to the calls. Oh, we did check out the history, too. There are rematches dating as far back as John Adams, who defeated Thomas Jefferson in 1796 and then lost to him 4 years later.
Yeah, so it's right in the founding of our country. I thought that was the case. So you had Adams versus Jefferson in 1796, right after.
Closest parallel may be the 1892 race between Cleveland and Benjamin Harrison. Cleveland served one term as president before being unseated by Harrison. Then he tried to get his old job back and ultimately did succeed.
So we have that history, too. So this is not unprecedented.
It's a little bit rare.
Former president runs again. It's kind of in our lifetime we haven't seen that, except now we're seeing it.
Yeah, we're seeing it now. Absolutely. So 1-800-684-3110. Let's go back to the phones. We'll go to Leanne, first in Maine, on line 2. Hey, Leanne.
Hey, how are you? Thanks
Great.
for taking my call.
Sure.
Love you guys. And I'm actually lived 12 years in Fulton County,
Oh, there you go.
Georgia. Escaped it because I'm personally involved in a internal affairs investigation against police officer corruption there. And I'm a gaslighting narcissist expert. And here's your deal. You're not going to get Biden. You're going to get Michelle Obama with Gavin Newsom. They're already setting you up for it. And they're going to parade, Freaky Joe around until he is too incapacitated, which they're already, and they're going to.
Leanne, I want to talk to you for a minute about this because I was of the same view that at the end of the day, it was not going to be Joe Biden. It was going to be Newsom and Obama, or Obama and Newsom, more likely, and which would have been a very tough ticket to beat politically. Let's just be honest.
If they had time.
Yeah, but now with him announcing, I'm not so sure.
I think they looked at something different. Listen, that could always be the case. You could always see hijinks being played. It's politics. But I think what the Democrats are looking at is we did much better than midterms. We were supposed to get killed. We didn't. The Joe Biden strategy worked last time campaigning from his basement. He'll just have to do a little bit more than that this time. Doesn't face any kind of real primary challenge whatsoever. And so he's going to keep telling the American people it's domestic, it's domestic, it's domestic. Don't look at Ukraine. Don't look over there at China. Don't worry about Russia. Don't worry about the Middle East or Iran or your interest rates. We'll keep bailing you out, basically. And we do have an issue where we have to face that. People know that if economic times are tough, they trust that Democrats are the party that will write them the check.
It's interesting because you said that they did not. You said this in the midterms when the Republicans barely got the House, that it was because, I remember when you said this, it was because the electors, the people casting votes, the citizens of the United States, were not trusting the Republicans with the economy.
That's right.
As bad as the economy situation was, they didn't trust it.
It wasn't that they don't trust Republicans to get us out, but they think they were so deep in a bad spot that they knew that Democrats were the first ones that would go to the checkbooks and they do, and they send out checks, and they bolster the economy, and they bolster your bank account, and you worry less about, printing too much money. At that point, you're just trying to be able to pay your bills and maybe try to take a vacation and keep your job and keep paying your mortgage. Now, some things have changed. I mean, the mortgages have gone up considerable. I mean,
gas is pushing $5 a gallon.
People are paying double what they were paying just years ago for the same house if they had a floating interest rate. Literally double. They are paying double for gas or more. They are not seeing an end in sight to any of that either. Yeah. I mean, the bank crisis thing kind of started quieting down, but the economy hasn't. There's no stability at all in our economy. And when you have war in Europe, plus a fractured Middle East right now, and China threatening war in Taiwan, I mean, the economy's not going to stable. It's not going to be stable.
Right.
But that ad that he ran doesn't mention any of those things we just talked about.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Take another call, or want to wait till we get back?
Yeah, we can take one more call right now. Teresa in Ohio on line 1. Hey, Teresa.
Hi. I appreciate you guys so much. That is why I support what you do.
Thank you.
And what you've said is absolutely true. We've seen it for decades now through Obama and now through Biden, which to me is also Obama. My point of the matter is, listening to that, the thing that daunted me as a Christian was that we are fighting for the soul of our country.
Yep.
Now, look at all they're doing. They're doing all the negative and evil things. They're fighting for the soul, okay, but they're fighting for it for the wrong.
Let me play for you. It's good, interesting call. Let me play. This is what you're talking about, the soul of the country. That's what Joe Biden's saying. Listen.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too.
This is that they're running off this. Teresa was very good analysis. Jordan, they're running off that exact same theme.
Right. The soul of the nation should be pro-abortion. It should be sending you money. It should printing money as needed. Don't worry about the violence in the streets. Don't worry about the drug problems. Don't worry about the border. Don't worry about what's going on overseas. They're still blaming that on Republicans. Remember, they blamed the Sudanese crisis in Sudan. They said that was the Republicans' fault. They said the Afghan withdrawal was Donald Trump's fault. I mean, the list goes on, but they think that people will believe it. And I know as conservatives, it can be hard to stomach that even anyone would believe that, but they're talking to an audience that's not as informed, that isn't watching news 24/7, that isn't paying as close attention, and that's living paycheck to paycheck. And if they're living paycheck to paycheck, they're not so much concerned about the stock market as they are a party that they believe will bail them out. Even if you believe, like I believe, that's just bad policy.
When we see something, when we hear something, when we're concerned about an issue, we don't just talk about it. We do something about it. And that goes to our Government Accountability Project.
If we allow leaders in Washington, D.C. to make decisions behind closed doors, unaccountable to the people, then we are going to get skewed and corrupt decisions.
There are lots of other places that do lots of important work for America, but the ACLJ has taken up a lane which is irreplaceable.
The Freedom of Information Act, that's a statute that allows us to get information from the government. Starts with a letter from our offices in Washington to these agencies, and it says, give us this information on these topics. And generally, they don't. And then we go to court.
We go through a series of lengthy negotiations back and forth about what they'll give or what they won't give. We may get tons of information that's redacted, and we have to then go back and say, you redacted too much. We can't really find out what you're giving us because it makes no sense. So it goes through a process of litigation.
That is how you get information, and that office is going to be more active now more than ever.
The ACLJ has been extremely active in vigorously seeking to hold these bureaucrats accountable. We have filed hundreds of FOIA requests. We have received over 20,000 pages of documents in our litigation.
Holding them accountable, holding the Biden administration accountable so that all Americans are able to have faith in their government.
We will up our efforts. We will not stop.
You're finding a nugget in a gold mine. Occasionally you'll come up with something that is really a bombshell, but you have to persist in doing it, and that's what we do.
That's a little bit of what we do through our Office of Government Accountability, and of course that comes under our Office of Government Affairs. So your support of the ACLJ supports all of that.
Sekulow. We are going to get to your calls in just a minute. We're going to stay on this at 1-800-684-3110, but there's important news to announce with an important ally of the United States of America in a place where we have an office, ACLJ Jerusalem, which is unique because it's an ACLJ office in Jerusalem. It's not a European Center for Law and Justice that's in Strasbourg, France. This is specifically to show that bond between the United States and Israel as our number one ally in the Middle East and one of our best allies in the entire world.
75th anniversary.
It is their 75th anniversary of their independence.
I am holding in my hand a pen that is the 50th anniversary pen, actually, that I got 25 years ago when I was with the former president of Israel, former prime minister as well, Shimon Peres. And this is the actual pen that I got 25 years ago. And our team is very dedicated to the defense of Israel in a hostile environment, and that's the United Nations. And, Cece, we often say that the UN passes more resolutions attacking Israel than any other country, sometimes any other countries combined.
Yeah, there are absolutely more resolutions against Israel at the UN through the different bodies than any other member state. They are constantly the target. And Israel, like you said, that is our ally, that is a very, democratic state. And they're actually the target of UN resolutions instead of the countries that really should be the targets of these resolutions.
When you think about the Middle East and you look at human rights, for instance, and civil liberties, who's the most giving? Who has the most freedoms and liberty of any country in the Middle East? Bar none, it's the state of Israel. Yet they're the ones attacked by the Human Rights Council. And one of the things we do, Jordan, and you've been very strategic on this, is our international teams. We have an office in Strasbourg, France. We are an NGO, non-governmental organization with the UN, which means we get to intervene like a state would and actually go to the floor of the United Nations to make our case, and this time a case supporting Israel.
Yeah, that's right. And in this situation, under COVID, you would see us doing a lot of these via video, but the Human Rights Council is back, and our team in Europe is back, and I want to just show you what these interventions look like. Now, oftentimes you see these about persecuted Christians that we're talking about, which is very important. In this case, Christoph got before that UN Human Rights Council, which is the most anti-Israel body within the UN, and let them have it on the truth about Israel. Take a listen or watch.
I now give the floor to the representative of the European Centre of Law for Law and Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. In June of this year, it will be 3 decades that the international community had adopted the Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action. It was adopted to reaffirm the solemn commitment of all states to fulfill their obligations, among other things, toward human rights, fundamental freedoms, the right to self-determination, which would not impair security and international territorial integrity of states, and the observance of international law. Yet one state is singled out in total disregard of these principles, as well as international law, for detrimental treatment. That is the state of Israel. In the name of self-determination of the Palestinian people and disregarding the right to self-determination of the Jewish people, innocent Israeli civilians are indiscriminately attacked by Palestinian armed groups. Israel's security and territorial integrity is violated every year. Yet when Israel responds to protect its civilian population, it is Israel that is accused of violating human rights. When it takes lawful security measures, it is Israel that is accused of racial discrimination. The Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action seeks compliance with the 4th Geneva Convention and other norms of humanitarian law. Israel's armed responses in self-defense in the face of thousands of indiscriminate rocket attacks are consistent with humanitarian law. Its security measures are permitted under the Geneva Conventions. Yet Israel is maligned for taking those measures. By falsely accusing Israel of wrongdoing, the international community simply disregards not only the express language of the Vienna Declaration, but its object and purpose.
Thank you.
I want to say something right here. Christoph did a great job.
Yeah, that's a hostile room to deliver that.
Look at the people around you right there, okay? This is a hostile group, and he was fearless. And here's the thing about the ACLJ, our European affiliates. There is no one that is engaging like this where these bodies sit, including the most hostile. And in this case, on behalf of Israel, but it could be on, like Jordan said, other issues as well. But our teams are there. So we're not just talking about these issues. And when you talk about the Geneva Convention and the Vienna Convention, these are the legal instruments that govern international law, and our teams are experts.
Yeah, and that's what's so great is we're able to actually give the actual facts and the actual law, because we see how these UN bodies like to spin it to make Israel the bad person. And we actually come and say, no, let's look at your Vienna Declaration and the Geneva Declaration. And under those, Israel is not the bad actor here. And so it's great that we, again, are able to be the voice for Israel, giving the facts and giving the actual law.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, it just shows the amount of unique work we do at the ACLJ because of your financial support. So whether it is the domestic issues and the politics that we're talking about here and the campaign issues and, of course, fighting back on all of the failures of the Biden administration, or the international work that, of course, impacts the United States. It impacts our economy right here at home. It impacts our national security. We're seeing a rise in Islamic terrorism right now because of failed states that have occurred under the Obama administration. Afghanistan, Sudan. These were the home bases of al-Qaeda. And they are becoming the home bases of al-Qaeda and ISIS once again. We have seen attacks on U.S. service members in Syria by Iran. That is how bold they feel right now. Iran feels like they can shoot, and they did kill an American contractor, injured other American men and women who are serving our armed forces, that they're at a point of strength that they can get into a tit-for-tat with the United States of America. We're being ignored, literally, our phone calls by Russia and China. So that, to think, you cannot separate those issues, as Joe Biden tried to do with his presidential announcement, from what is happening so badly here in the United States. It affects our gas prices. It affects our supply chains. It affects our standing in the world. And it affects our dollar and our currency. So all of those issues, when we fail abroad and are weak abroad, lead to a weak America, which means a weak economy and a really tough place to govern and live in.
You know, they had China and Russia. There was reports yesterday talking about trying to gain control. It sounds like a flashback to 1967 or 1956 when you had the wars in Israel by the Arab neighbors that were hostile. And they always would try to get the Suez Canal, which, by the way, was built under Benjamin Disraeli's tenure as Prime Minister of Great Britain. And that's a huge trade route, obviously. And it's a strategic location, the Suez Canal. And they're talking about Russia and China trying to get control of those areas. So we're back to the same thing. But here's the thing with the ACLJ. We are there front and center to advocate on behalf of this case, on behalf of Israel, but in other cases, as persecuted Christians, whatever the topic may be. These are hostile environments, but we're going there.
Absolutely. Every time the Human Rights Council meets,
we're there.
The ACLJ is there, and we are supporting persecuted Christians and the state of Israel.
I've got to tell you something, folks. There's a reason right now to support the work of the ACLJ. In action, you just saw it. ACLJ.org. Yesterday, we uncovered our project, the ACLJ.org/coverup, where we got the information from our Freedom of Information Act litigation on terrorists coming in from the southern border. That's because of the work of the ACLJ. Support our work. We're in a matching challenge campaign. We are down to the last few days. ACLJ.org. That's ACLJ.org. Any amount you donate, we're getting a matching gift for. I encourage you. We literally have 5 days left. ACLJ.org. Back with the second half hour in a moment. Here's what I want to say to our ACLJ members, or for those of you that enjoy watching this broadcast. Whether it is going after the deep state, whether it is litigation that we're engaged in, whether it is defending the persecuted church and getting individuals out of prison because of their faith in other countries, whether it's training lawyers to fight for religious liberty, not just here in the United States, but around the globe, whether it is producing a daily, 5 days a week, 1 hour live television and radio broadcast heard on thousands of radio stations, on TV platforms, on social media platforms. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. We want to encourage you to support the work of the ACLJ. And when you do that, you're supporting our production teams, our videos, whether it's that kind of production and other things that we are working on. The ACLJ is front and center on this. We're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Go to ACLJ.org.
Keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome back to Sekulow. You know, yesterday we launched aclj.org/coverup. You may have gotten in your email. You may have seen the videos on social media, but we encourage you to check that out. It walks you through a very important FOIA we filed, and it walks you through exactly how it works. This involved the two terrorists who crossed the southern border, Yemeni terrorist, whose the press release went out and was removed the same day because the FBI didn't want it out there because it hurt the narrative of the Biden administration when we talk about the porous border, not only just illegal immigrants coming across, but bad actors, whether that's drug cartels and the flow of fentanyl, so you know that's a fact. But also this confirmed the fact that terrorists were utilizing any kind of chaotic situations. This is one of them at the southern border. I mean, there are 40,000 people right now estimated just waiting for Title 42 to expire in mid-May. 40,000 at the border just waiting, knowing that the federal government has no plans on what to do when that expires. So check out aclj.org/coverup. It's very interactive. It kind of walks you through how do you get the FOIA documents. First, the filing for FOIA, then having to go to court. We're continuing to go to court. We got more information yesterday that there's another 400 documents relevant to our request that we should receive, but that the Homeland Security Committee, the Homeland
Security Commission,
the Secretary of
Homeland Security,
sent over to other government agencies
for review.
Now, we know that then makes it an even tougher process.
So we go to
fight
court,
harder.
back to court,
because we now know they didn't name the agencies. We need to know which agencies those are because we might need to file against them directly.
Exactly, and we're in court.
So the Department of Homeland Security is trying to shift it from there.
Yeah, we are in court. We will continue to stay in court, but let me encourage you, go to aclj.org/coverup. It's a great way to get information on this, and we're going to have more of these coming in the months ahead, but aclj.org/coverup. Let's go ahead and take a phone call on the campaigning.
Yeah, I want to go to Glenn in New York on line 1. Hey, Glenn.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Great.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just had a comment. Listen, I voted for Trump, and I just what this president, this administration has done to this country in the past 2.5 years. My only concern is that there's a lot of people that don't like his demeanor. They don't like his personality, Trump's, that is. And if Trump doesn't back out and let another Republican like DeSantis run for the primary, it's going to cost us votes, and we might very well lose 2024.
Look, DeSantis is nobody's holding DeSantis back other than he wants to get through the legislative session, so he's going to enter, and then it'll be who wins the campaign. But let me tell you what I think the campaign is going to come down to. Yeah, you may not like the tweets, but you probably don't like the war in Russia and Ukraine either. You don't like the tweets, but you don't like paying $5 or $6 a gallon for gas. You're not so thrilled about the tweets, but you don't like the government, our government, having complete chaos in the Middle East. You don't like the tweets, but Iran is saber-rattling, and now they got Saudi Arabia on their team, who was on our team just 2.5 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, I dealt with the tweets, so I can relate, but I'm going to tell you, I think it's going to come down to that. Now, does that get you bring a very valid point about independence in these, but listen, the economy is going to be a major factor. Normally when the economy's in turmoil, it's a change of presidential leadership, but you have to be able to convince a message that you can be trusted with the economy.
I mean, certainly, that's the big factor out here. It's not the elephant in the room. It's the actual discussion. It's can Donald Trump get back over the line? But I think we also have to deal with reality of politics. He's got a number of supporters who believe he can right now, and it's getting close in this primary where anybody would have to start pulling away his voters.
Yeah, and like I said,
so to win this primary right now, you have to not only beat your other 3 or 4 people that are getting 5 and 6%. You got to take away Donald Trump's supporters.
Yeah,
and if you look, his supporters are pretty committed.
They are committed. John Adams against who defeated Thomas Jefferson only lost to him 4 years later. So the repeats happen, and then of course we pointed out that probably the most strongest parallel is Grover Cleveland to Benjamin Harrison. This is not unprecedented in U.S. history where former presidents and current presidents go to battle for the nomination. It's part of our history. It's because we live in a constitutional republic, and that's the way it works. And whoever gets the nomination is the party's nominee.
Check out aclj.org/coverup. Share that with your friends and family. We'll be right back.
In my time in service, both as the CI director and as Secretary of State, I watched the good work that the ACLJ was doing here in the States and all across the world.
The ACLJ's work at the UN, overseas with the European Court of Justice, is incredibly important.
We have on our team lawyers, non-lawyers as well, that are policy experts. They're all engaged in foreign policy issues.
We have been focused on protecting the nation state of Israel, particularly before the United Nations.
We don't shy away from the battles that are going on at the UN and just complain about them. We actually try to go in and do something positive and actually affect change.
The risk of an incomplete or unsolid relationship between the United States of America and Israel is real.
Israel is very important to the ACLJ, and we will always fight for Israel's rights.
We had a series of cases at the European Court of Human Rights, primarily dealing with religious liberty.
And as Secretary of State, I saw this too. Nations that had more religious freedom were on firmer footing. They had better democracies.
America has always been the world leader in religious liberties, in freedom of conscience and freedom of speech.
We've taken the First Amendment, and that has been our cornerstone. It's to defend the rights of people of faith and others that are having their rights abused.
We not only hold our government accountable, but we hold other governments accountable.
You have to keep the battle going when it's not cool anymore, when it's not the #1 story on TV. You have to actually be committed to fighting it out, or else you'll never win.
The ACLJ's front and center on this. We're in a matching challenge campaign. Any amount you donate, we get a matching gift for. Your support of the ACLJ enables us to do all of this. Go to aclj.org today. That's aclj.org.
Sekulow, there is some positive movement. Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee have unveiled a border security package on Monday that would increase Border Patrol hiring while resuming border wall construction and providing for additional technology. In response to the ongoing crisis at the southern border, we know that there are 40,000 people waiting for Title 42 to expire at the middle of, is it May 12th or is it May 11th? May 12th, I think the Title 42 expires. And then so that's gone. The administration has announced no plans for what to do next. We know that they have redone their rules when it comes to not just illegal immigration, but to basically migrants coming from seeking asylum, parole, and so we've had these huge numbers coming in from places like Venezuela. Which, if our economy was booming and they were having such a tough time living under a communist dictatorship, you could bring more people in that way. When your economy is doing horrible and there's so much uncertainty, that's just another factor that American businesses have to work through and cities have to work through, and people are coming who are starting at zero, that don't speak the language, that don't necessarily have a job ready to go, and all they have to have is like an NGO sponsor. This is called the Border Reinforcement Act of 2023, which focuses on border security, funding, and staffing. And Logan, I look at that Biden announcement video. There was not even a mention of our southern border.
Of course not.
Americans are being killed because of what's happening at the southern border. It's fentanyl. It is drug cartels, and the violence from drug cartels has spilled over where they're killing kids, killing babies in the back of cars, in drug-style cartel killings in California. I mean, we saw that. The fentanyl crisis, the drug crisis, and then we've seen terrorists caught. I mean, with our new campaign on aclj.org/coverup, walking people through that campaign that the Biden administration doesn't want you to focus on, that it's not just a bunch of people coming to work in the fields for cheap labor.
Yeah.
It's a lot of bad actors utilizing chaos at the border.
Yeah, we're going to show the video that we're running right now to promote this campaign, the cover-up campaign. It really is that. And I think you're right. It's as clear as it could be, the fact that it's not at all mentioned in that video, that's not at all mentioned in the Biden announcement video, because not only do they not want you to know about the bad actors coming across, they don't want you to even think about it. They want you not to even be on your mind about the border, just like they do with Islamic terrorism, all the different topics that are on the rise right now. The Biden administration will just ignore it, not talk about how they're going to fight against it, just pretend it's not happening, show us roses and sunshine. And that's what it is, always coming from the Biden campaign. Finish the job. Well, first you got to start that job is to get down there. But let's take a look. This is what they're trying to cover up at the border.
In 2021, 2 Yemeni nationals on the FBI terror watch list were caught by U.S. Border Patrol agents. This was a heroic moment. Deep state officials silenced the heroism of our border agents who put their lives on the line to keep us safe. The White House doesn't want you to know they've lost all control of the border. If it wasn't for the work of the ACLJ filing a Freedom of Information Act request, you would never have known how close terrorists came to disappearing into the shadows of our city streets. We were able to do this all thanks to you. Keep us in the fight. To learn more, go to aclj.org/coverup.
Yeah, so there you go, aclj.org/coverup. You
Tell
can find
people
out all
about
the
it.
details.
We just launched yesterday, so if you didn't hear the broadcast yesterday, you might have gotten the email, you might have seen it on social media, the video ad, but it's a full website taking you through the process.
Yeah, you can really dive deep on the website. I love it. You can look at all even the documents that we were able to uncover, the documents we were able to send to get the responses back, and not just the photos, obviously, and the imagery that comes from the border and the stuff we were able to obtain, but really the FOIA request. You're able to see a full timeline. It's a full interactive experience. It feels almost like a CSI experience to go and play around on this site and see all the information. I mean, just to be able to actually see the documents, see what they redacted, what they didn't, and the fact that it takes time. You know, the timeline starts in April of 2021 and ends right now, even though we're still working on it, March 20th, 2023. So just a few weeks ago, when we kind of were able to officially expose this cover-up that came from the Biden administration, where they said, no, we are not going to showcase the fact that our Border Patrol agents actually did a good job for once, because we don't want you to even be thinking about the fact that there are terrorists at the border.
Right. I mean, so it's not only taking away their moment where they did something good, it's the bigger narrative that the FBI at top floor, which we know they play politics with everything, and that is wrong, but it is reality right now that we're dealing with, that they don't want that narrative out there, that what we've been saying for so long, that when you have a porous border and chaos, it's not just the migrants that get across, and those numbers are overwhelming cities. Just that alone is destroying American cities. It's killing economies of border cities and states. And remember all the shipping people around the country and the chaos around that. That's bad enough. But you know, in those kind of bad situations, that the real bad actors, they utilize them. They say, hey, this is a great time to get drugs into the U.S. This is a great time to get terrorists into the U.S. So let's utilize it. We'll blend right in. Yep. We'll get the fentanyl right over. We'll kill your American kids. By the way, the Chinese are responsible for that, just like with COVID. They're killing Americans, using all these different ways to kill Americans, whether it is through, and they're utilizing our porous border to do it, whether it's through drugs or terrorists who will come here and then sometimes spend, Logan, 3, 4, 5 years before planning an attack.
Right. We know
to plan
this,
the attack.
We know this. We've seen it happen time and time again, but that's why we did create this new campaign. Obviously, we want you to support the work of the ACLJ. We're here at the end of a matching challenge, the end of the matching challenge for April. We take off matching challenge for a few months. So this is really the best time to support the work of the ACLJ. And if you want to have real, tangible proof of the work that we're doing, this is a great place to go and discover a lot of what was going on, not only at the border, but the work of our ACLJ team. So I encourage you to go to aclj.org/coverup, and while you're there, to make a donation, because right now it's matched.
So again, it's a great place to support the work, to keep us in the fight. That is the slogan we're going with the aclj.org/coverup. Keep us in the fight. That fight just on this cover-up is ongoing as we speak. We announced yesterday on the show, CBP came back to us with, they have 400 additional documents. We've gotten about 400 documents. They have additional 400 documents, but they've sent them to other government agencies, Homeland Security, to review. So now we need to know what other government agencies have them under their review, and do we need to push those separately with the judge to get the documents to us? They're saying they're relevant to our request. Another 400 documents just on this matter of a press release.
Yeah.
Which shows you, Logan, too, how much politics there were. If there's 800 documents out there over putting up and then removing a press release that happened within 8 hours.
Yeah.
It tells you that we have only at the tip of the iceberg on the political players. We have one, Marcia Espinoza, but they always throw out a Lois Lerner. It's that one person cannot be responsible for all of
a
this.
sacrificial lamb.
Someone that a committee can call for to testify.
Yeah.
I believe if we get those 400 additional documents, so keep us in the fight, donate, support the work of the ACLJ, there will be more Marcia Espinosas who will then, as we speak, we've got Republicans in charge of the House. If we get them enough info, they will call a committee hearing on this, and they will bring those people forward and expose to the American people that they are trying to keep from you the fact that terrorists are crossing our southern border to kill us. They know that, and yet they are not willing to take any steps to secure our southern border. How sick is that when you think about it? They know that the drug cartels are sending across fentanyl to kill our kids. They know that terrorists are crossing the southern border because it is in crisis to kill Americans. And yet they have no plan for when Title 42 expires on May 12th. Nothing. There are 40,000 people right now at the border. I guarantee you not all of those 40,000 are just people coming to America because they want a better life. Probably most are. But the bad actors are right in between them to kill more Americans, whether it's through terrorism or through drugs. And you would think when Joe Biden announces his presidential campaign, he would at least acknowledge that there's work that we need to do to save American lives here at home. So keep us in the fight. Be part of our matching challenge. Donate today at aclj.org.
Yeah, but tomorrow Senator Hagerty will be joining us to discuss this and discuss his legislation, which is the Stop Fentanyl Border Crossings Act. So that's going to be, we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. It doesn't just end today. And of course, a lot of that will end up on our website at aclj.org. Or again, you can go directly to the campaign, aclj.org/coverup. I encourage you right now, if you're on social media, tweet that link out, post it on Truth, post it on Facebook, just aclj.org/coverup, and tell your friends they need to do that right now as well. They need to take a look at what's going on. So much of this is just about awareness. You can obviously donate directly to the from that website to the ACLJ, but it's not just about that. It's about finding out and showcasing you the work that our team is doing that is really vital, especially as we are heading into a time where President Biden makes this announcement today that he is seeking re-election. Even though it seems like polling is saying the majority of even Democrats are like, I don't know if that's what we want. But again, presumptive
They're going to run
nominate.
that sleeper campaign again.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to come back, support the work of the ACLJ. We're going to talk more the debt ceiling coming up next.
The face-off between the president and the new House Speaker as the summer deadline to raise the debt ceiling looms. Analysts saying a default could devastate the economy.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy and other House Republicans are seeking to pass a bill on the debt ceiling this week.
The plan would raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion or through the end of next year, whichever comes first. It limits government growth to 1% over the next decade, and it promises $4.5 trillion in spending cuts.
We will see Republicans put forth this bill as soon as tomorrow. They're going to mark it up in the Rules Committee, and the hope is that they can have a vote on this sometime midweek.
I met with President Biden at the White House on February 1st, 75 days ago. During our meeting, I told the president clearly, let's find a way to come to an agreement. Like we have before. Had the president agreed to negotiate in good faith, we'd already be done. Unfortunately, I have not heard from the White House since our very first meeting. President Biden has been missing in action and misleading the public. Mr. President, with all due respect, enough is enough.
McCarthy's right to call him out on it. There's plenty of money coming in, despite the spending of the government, plenty of money coming in to pay the debt, pay the interest, pay the military, pay Medicare, pay Social Security. They're just playing a dangerous game. So everything they ascribe to the Republicans, they're the ones practicing it, putting the country in jeopardy.
Kevin McCarthy's a reasonable person. What's not reasonable? We want to live within our means. We want to stop wasteful spending. We want our economy to grow. We want to get people back to work. That's what Kevin McCarthy has said. And Joe Biden says, he must not like any of those things. So Joe Biden is the guy here that is not doing his job. He is not showing up and acting like the president.
All right, welcome back to to Sekulow. So Joe Biden makes the announcement. I do want to take another call on that. We got the Sekulow Brothers podcast coming up, too. Get more into it was an interesting announcement, let's put it that way. It was really, I think it showed you how he's going to campaign, which is from the Rose Garden, not a lot of big rallies, not a lot of huge events, and that worked for him the first time, and they're going to see if it works for him the second time with at least having the surroundings and trappings of the White House behind him instead of just his basement in Delaware next to his classified documents and his Corvette. But let's go to Danny in North Carolina first on line one. Hey, Danny.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call today.
Sure.
I just wanted to share a comment that has really bothered me. Do you guys remember or have you ever read in our history that we have had a vice president that has done the least amount of work as Vice President Harris has?
Well, it's interesting because you have to kind of go to modern history. And because, Harry, I think it's important to point out, we've not always had vice presidents that were from the same party.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
So early on in our founding, the vice president was the person who came in second place in the presidential election. So I would imagine those presidents didn't rely on those vice presidents a lot for anything. But what they figured out very quickly was that won't work because of that very reason. So, yes, in our history, we actually have had to correct that. Now, but I think, Harry, you look into modern history, usually vice presidents have been utilized for specific policy roles. They get a kind of a portfolio. With President Trump and Pence did a lot of religious liberty, a lot of foreign policy. But, he played a secondary but very important role when it also came to the structuring of the government. He was seen as like the guy he'd been a governor to kind of keep things running on track while President Trump was working on big policies and traveling the world with big plans. So I think in modern history, Harris has been usually at best, they're just not important. They usually aren't a drag. What I think is different, what I think he's getting to is that she seems like a drag on the presidency.
I think that's correct. And I think the missing ingredient in Vice President Kamala Harris's tenure as vice president is something called competence. She has proved herself, in my opinion, incompetent with respect to, for instance, the border. She, after all, was named the border czar, but she doesn't have time to actually visit the border. They had also given her other specific tasks, and essentially she has made a word salad out of her tenure as vice president. And I think Vice President Biden has sidelined her in part because of her incompetence.
I want to go to the debt ceiling because we're quickly going to that vote. It's always a tough vote for Republicans, especially when you got a narrow Republican majority in the House and no friends in the Senate, and a White House, Harry, that is refusing to even meet.
Absolutely. And I think this is a predetermined strategy by the Biden administration. They believe they have the votes in the Senate. There is no evidence that Mitch McConnell, John Thune, or any of the other Republicans are prepared to raise a fight against the Biden administration. And House Speaker McCarthy has a very slim majority in the House. So he has a narrow window, and I think he possibly can delay this debt ceiling vote, but I'm not necessarily sure he can do anything substantively. I think also we should keep in mind that the debt ceiling vote in large part is kabuki theater. In other words,
because I think people hear this and they're like, well, in my life, I don't just get to raise my debt ceiling. And I don't get to just say, well, I need to spend another, $200,000, so I'll just raise my debt by fiat. They have to go and try to get loans to do something like that, which is even more difficult to do right now.
I think that's correct. So technically, the debt ceiling vote allows the Treasury to go out and borrow more money that the federal government doesn't have. And so both the Republicans and the Democrats have engaged in a spending spree over the last decade or so, and now some of these chickens are coming home to roost. But with respect to raising the debt ceiling, it's far from clear when and if we need to raise the debt ceiling, because the Treasury Secretary can engage in extraordinary measures designed to put off the day of reckoning. But I think really listeners should note that we really don't have a debt ceiling crisis. We have a spending crisis, and both Republicans and Democrats have contributed to that. But I think House Speaker McCarthy is trying to do something to rein in spending, but a lot of the spending is already baked into the cake. But most presidents, getting back to President Biden, they are willing to at least negotiate around the edges, around the fringes. And they could do that, but the Biden administration doesn't want to upset its base. And so the Biden administration is signaling that any substantial cut or even a small cut in spending is simply cruel.
You know, I think, Harry, what our audience would like to know is, like, what should they be upset with Kevin McCarthy, or is he doing everything he can? I mean, what can he really do as Speaker to prevent just having to go down this route? I mean, he could try to get meetings, he could try to negotiate, but he can't force the president or Senate Democrats to go along with it either. So I think I want people to be fair in their criticism, you know.
I think that's a fair point. It's important to note that Kevin McCarthy has some tools at his disposal. Number one, he can pass a bill which would allow the debt ceiling to rise in exchange for spending cuts. Okay. The problem with that, of course, is he doesn't have a lot of leverage, and the Senate is unlikely to go along. So that's the first thing that he can do. And the second thing he can do, and he's indicated a willingness to do this, is to actually negotiate with President Biden, who seems unwilling to do so.
Yeah, I mean, here he is. He says, I will go, I will negotiate, I will try to do what's best for the American people. And Biden is just ignoring the House Republicans. It's an interesting strategy that from someone who said he wanted to work across aisles, Logan, and he won't even take a meeting. He won't even take a meeting with McCarthy on this issue.
Yeah, I think American people may have had enough of that.
He wants to force McCarthy, the Republican, to have to raise the debt ceiling and have the conservatives turn on McCarthy. Yeah, it's a disaster strategy. It's a chaos strategy that Biden is trying to unleash on Republicans.
And there's the realization where in the NBC News poll today said that 70% of Americans total said he shouldn't run again for president. 70%, not just Republicans.
But I guarantee he has a 50% chance of winning.
At least.
Yeah.
Incumbents hard to beat.
Yep.
So it'll be pretty interesting to see how things are going to shake out. But when you have those kind of numbers coming in, you can tell these people are unhappy. The problem is people vote for their party. And if it's Donald Trump, we'll have to see what happens.
We have a lot of great stuff coming up this week, too. We've got Senator Haggerty joining us tomorrow. The newest member of our team on Thursday, Tulsi Gabbard of our broadcast team, will be back on the air with us as she makes her weekly appearance, as well as Rick Riddell. So a lot, busy week here at the ACLJ, and we launched aclj.org/coverup. We want you to check that out. And if you want to get to a little more of the fun side of this announcement, check out the Sekulow Brothers podcast this afternoon, Logan.
Yeah, we'll have more this afternoon. Join us. Go to SekulowBrothers.com, where you can subscribe on. Rumble is our primary source. If you want to find us, you can watch us, hear us. We're on all your favorite podcast players as well. Just search up Sekulow Brothers. You'll find us. They're always a more lighthearted look at what's going on in the media and the world of politics.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.